We've looked across the landscape at defensive tackles, and a lot of the other people in the college football and NFL draft space are really high on this young man. But he's not shown up on the box score completely yet, and that's why he's a little lower with me. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Draft Yoda, where we're data-driven and prospect-focused. Today, we're breaking down Miami defensive tackle Justin Scott. Currently an 8.97 out of 10, making him a number 48 overall prospect and defensive tackle number 6 going into this season. This is one of those evaluations where the traits are ahead of the production. And I think a lot of people are falling in love with the traits. I just want to see the production catch up. So maybe I'm a little lower on him right now, and he will climb. Let's see what the season brings. You know, no, he did not start playing football early. He was a basketball player first at St. Ignatius in Chicago, and football came later. Honestly, that matters a little bit because when you're evaluating your defensive tackle with this kind of movement profile, the basketball background shows up. You see the feet, you see the body control, and you see the ability to redirect. And you see natural movement from a player who's almost 300 pounds. And it's part of what makes him interesting. He's not a player who's been built only for football since childhood. He's not, he's an athlete who moved into football and has started developing quickly. Once he got there, the growth has been obvious. As a junior, he started both defensive line and offensive guard. 42 tackles, 13 tackles for loss, and 4.5 sacks. As a senior, he was, all state in Illinois and invited to the All American Bowl. That's a rapid climb. That's very, very rapid climb. Became a 5-star recruit, top 15 national prospect. Originally committed to Ohio State, but flipped to Miami in November 2023. And before he ever played a college snap, he landed on Bruce Fieldman's freak list for his testing. His athletic profile is extremely loud. He's not just a big defensive tackle. He's a big defensive tackle with very rare movement tools. People are not waiting for you to become a solid college starter. They're waiting for him to become a difference maker. And that's why 2026 is super important. As a freshman, he worked as a backup for Miami, played in 12 games, finished with 7 tackles and a sack. Not a huge role, but he was still learning, and he's still learning. You have to develop, you have to learn leverage, you have to learn hand placement, you have to survive double teams, you have to understand run fits, and you have to have a rush plan. And for a young guy, that all still had to develop. 2025 happened, and he appeared in 16 games for Miami. That mattered. Miami made a deep run, and Scott held up through the entire schedule. 23 tackles, 6.5 tackles for loss, and 2 sacks. The numbers are underwhelming, but there were flashes of, some high-level stuff. Both sacks came in a game against Virginia Tech, for instance. He forced a fumble in that game, had 4 total pressures in that game. And then his game against Pittsburgh, he had 4 stops that showed early down disruption. And those are the flashes that I think a lot of people have gotten really hyped on him about. And that's why you're seeing him as high as defensive tackle 2 or defensive tackle 1 on other people's boards. Personally, I can see him getting up there. But for right now, I gotta see a little more on film. You can't just be flashes to be my defensive tackle number 1. Now let's get into some of the things that do stand out. His get off. He has a great first step quickness for a 298-pound 3 technique. It makes the whole projection interesting. When he times the step and comes off the ball clean, guards are immediately stressed. You know, they have to open their hips, they have to catch up, they have to protect inside the gap, and they have to deal with a player who can beat them before the rep really even starts. And that's valuable. There is value there. Um, Second thing I love is, he looks like a movement three technique. He's not just a space eater. He's not just a nose tackle. He's not just a big body who occupies blockers. He's best when he's allowed to attack. When you put him over a guard, you let him get off, work edges, swipe and clear, and get into the backfield. Um, that's where a lot of people are seeing his ceiling and seeing, that he could be the super defensive tackle. Another great Miami defensive tackle coming out. Um, Third thing that really stands out is his length. Um, his length, he has the length to stack and shed. Um, it matters because the movement is great, but guards can get to your chest and control your frame. The play is over. Scott can keep blockers off him when his hands are right. They can stay cleaner. He can stay cleaner than other interior defenders. He can separate. He can disengage. And when he plays with extension, he gives himself a chance to control the rep. Um, he has active hands too. Scott plays with some active hands and a quick swipe to clear rusher's lane. Um, that's important because get off alone is not enough. At the next level, every guard can recover. Every center has help. Every offensive line has a plan for you going into the game. So defensive tackles need counters. They need to be able to clear hands. They need to win after first contact. And Scott has started showing that he can do that. He has a swipe up, or he has a swipe that shows up. He has some hand quickness that shows up, and the ability to clear and move shows up. But he has to keep developing it. Right now, his wins are wins where when he wins at the start of the rep. The next step for him is he needs to finish and win throughout the rep. I mentioned it briefly before, but the Virginia Tech game, 2 sacks, 4 pressures, a forced fumble. It's a game that really shows what he could become. Um, it's the version of Scott that makes you understand why he was a 5-star. He was winning very easily. He created pressure. He was finishing and was affecting a quarterback. And when that version shows up, he looks like a future high-level NFL player. The problem is it's not shown up enough. And that's the entire evaluation, The flash is amazing, but the consistency needs to come in, Nobody's perfect. I've said it in every single one, nobody's perfect. First thing, I need him to be more consistent in his production. The production lags behind the talent. 2 sacks in a full season is not enough for a player with this kind of get off. I do think 2 sacks understates how often he won the rep. Pressures do matter. It's not just the sack column that I need for him to increase on. At some point, the production has to reflect the traits. If Scott wants to climb in the draft, in my draft rankings, I need these numbers to jump. I need him to show me that the flashes can become more consistent. Speaking of consistency, I need him to be able to finish more consistently. Missed 5 tackles. And like I said in other videos, missing a number of tackles isn't bad when you have a high number of tackles. When you have a low number of tackles, like he does, it becomes an issue. It's a percentage thing. You know, you you can get penetration all you want, but if you can't finish, there was really no point in it. You know, when you get your hands on a quarterback or a running back, you have to bring them down. Right now, the finish wobbles too often. You know, it's one of the easiest ways for a disruptive player to leave production on the field is not being able to finish. And Scott needs to become a cleaner finisher because as his missed tackles come down, his impact goes up. It's as simple as that. Third concern I have for him is his frame. You know, Scott's about 300 pounds, but the frame still looks on the lean side for holding up against interior doubles. That's important because he's a three technique. And he can win with quickness and length, but against bigger offensive lines, you know, teams are going to test his anchor. They're going to double him. They're going to run at him. And they're going to see whether he can sit down, hold his ground, and keep the gap alive, or get swallowed up by blockers. Um, he is my defensive tackle number 6 on the board. He has a rare get off. His length is real. The movement skills are outstanding. The scheme flexibility has value to it. But the production has not arrived, and I got to see him produce. You know, your rare talents get you into the top 50. Production gets you into the top 25. That's the difference. You know, coming into 2026, I want to see a breakout. I want to see him live up to his pedigree. He has the traits, he's shown flashes. I need to see production. The checklist is very clear. Turn more pressures into sacks. Cut down on the missed tackles. Add a little functional strength. Keep developing those counter moves, you know, and become a weekly problem, not just a flash player. If he does that, the grade is going to rise because NFL teams love young interior defenders with a first step quickness. They love players who can rush from the inside. They love players who have not fully maxed out yet. And Scott has all of that. He just has to make it obvious that he's that guy. You know, the question for him is the finish. I keep harping on this, but the question for him is the finish. Can he finish it in rush? Can he finish the tackles? Can he finish games as a dominant presence? If he turns 2 sacks last season into 6 or 7, cuts the missed tackles down, and holds up better against doubles, he could climb into the top 3 defensive tackles in this class very easily. That's how high his talent is. But the box score, if the box score continues to stay quiet, he'll remain the player that scouts like more than the production supports. That's the line. You know, some scouts are going to fall in love with him. The Underwear Olympics, the Combine, every year, we see it happen where these guys come in and just are freaks of nature. But if you don't have it on film and you don't have the production showing, it doesn't really blow me away. Especially since you're in the ACC and no shot to the ACC, but Miami's got what, 3 games really of difficult games to play this season before the playoffs? You have to show out. You're not going against, you know, the SECs. You're not going against the Big Tens. You don't see Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State, USC, you know, every week. You don't see that until the final run into the postseason. So I need to see you dominate in a ACC that is not 1A, it's 1B. I hope that makes sense. Currently, he has an 8.97 out of 10. Makes him a number 48 overall prospect, defensive tackle number 6. He, 2 sacks, 4 pressures, and a 4th fumble against Virginia Tech is the game that people hang their hats on watching him. I need to see that kind of production across the entire season. That's the end of the story. I need to see the production. I need him to be able to finish his tackles more. I need the frame to add a little bit of functional strength. If he truly wants to be a future NFL starter and a potential star in the NFL, well, that's my board. What do you think about Justin Scott? Do you think he's a breakout candidate for this season in college football? Can the 5-star traits truly turn into elite production? And where would you have him ranked among the best defensive tackles in this class, this draft class? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. If you like these player evaluations, they're built on film and analytics. Hit the like button, subscribe to the channel. We're going to keep putting in this work. Our goal is to have over 100 prospects, and we're almost halfway there. As always, I'm Draft Yoda, Bill Workman, your favorite draft nerd's favorite draft nerd, and we'll see you guys in the next one.